Hey guys, Brian Davis here from Spark Rental. Super glad to have you with us. And I am so excited to have Greg Butcher with us today. Greg was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps. He now invests full time in real estate through his business, Blue Sky Equity Partners. And he has a fascinating story to share with us from, service life in the Marines to real estate millionaire in the private sector or, in the civilian world. So Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here, Brian.
Yeah, so let's rewind the clock back to you're still an officer in the Marines, less than a decade ago. Walk us through, how you ended up transitioning out of the service, and how you got into real estate from there.
Yeah, absolutely. When I found real estate, it was about 2 decades ago. I was running a reserve unit in Bakersfield, California, and I happened to buy my first house thanks to the VA home loan program, which I
Oh, it's a
never would have
great
been able to
program.
do it before. It is, it's fantastic. I never would have been able to do it without that. But I did, and it was at just a few years before the crash of '08. So I bought the house in 2002, sold it in 2005, and I moved away again. In the meantime, while I was there, someone gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad to read, which changed my life then, and like it probably has a lot of your listeners.
Oh yeah, the little
Um,
purple book.
exactly. So that opened my eyes, like, real estate, okay. And then I sold that house in 2005, and it had more than doubled in value
Oh
in those
wow, in
3
3 years.
years. Yeah, but it's what was happening in California, especially in the market those years, the early 2000s. Yeah, I made a killing off of it. So I'm like, yeah, give me some more of this real estate stuff. So, so I had this idea to every time I moved duty stations, because I didn't feel like I was ready to get out yet at the time. I felt like I still had something left to do. I wanted to buy a house when I moved duty stations and live in it, and then when I moved away again, buy a new one and live in, and rent out the last one and keep it as a rental and just add to my rental portfolio that way. And so I did that until I moved to Germany in 2008, just before the bottom dropped out of the market, and I realized there's this thing called a market cycle, and I just
Right.
bought a couple of houses at the peak. So a few years later, I was back in California after finishing up that Germany tour, and I was trying to get back into real estate. I'd put it all on hold while I was in Europe because I just wanted to travel around and do everything I could while I was there, and didn't really see how I could do it very easily from Europe. So I was trying to figure out how to make it scalable. That's what I couldn't figure out. How can I make this scalable? Because without making it scalable, this isn't going to change my life in a meaningful way, the way I want it to, where I didn't have to work again after, besides for myself, after I retired off of active duty. And so I was really trying hard to figure that out. And that's when I found out about multifamily and about the power of investing through syndications. And those two things changed my life. And, suddenly I realized this is much more scalable. Forget single family homes, at least for me. And that was my future. So that's how I got into it. At least how I heard about it. Right as I was retiring off active duty in 2015, I joined one of the well-known multifamily syndication, mentoring, and educational programs. So I paid for education and for mentorship to compress timelines and cut out a lot of mistakes that I would have made if I was just trying to do it all myself and learn on my own.
Oh yeah.
And that's the rest is history. It took about a year of investing passively and going through the coursework before and meanwhile, I was moving back to the coast from being out in the desert in California and trying to get my first civilian job I'd had in 20 years and trying to enjoy being retired a little bit too. But my second year in that program, I was like buckled down. I was like, hey, I need to sponsor a deal now. And so it took a few months before I was able to find the right team and then find the right property. But we did in fairly short order, actually. So,
Well, I want to dive in and learn more about that first deal. But before we do that, so did you get a full-time civilian job after you left the military?
I did, and that's what I was hoping to avoid with real estate. But I needed it for a while still.
Oh,
And
sure.
but what I did, for needing one, I found about the best possible deal I could. I worked as a defense contractor for the organization that I had just retired out of, actually.
Ah,
Basically, working for the person who replaced me in that job, and it was completely telework, work from home, remote, and it was actually so hands off at the time. It was damn near criminal. So it let me, as long as I got my projects done on time, no one knew or cared where I was in any given moment of the day. So I partnered up with a couple of guys in that program I mentioned, who were based out of Dallas, and they had just closed their first deal in Norman, Oklahoma, which coincidentally is where I went to college. I grew up in Oklahoma and went to the University of Oklahoma.
Okay.
So yeah, so they had deal flow coming to them in Phoenix, but no way to get out there to look at deals. And meanwhile, Phoenix was about the close. I was living in North San Diego County in California, which is a great place to live, but I'm not going to invest in California because one of my criteria is to invest in markets that have, that landlord-tenant laws are, oriented towards the landlords. And that's nowhere in the state of California. So Phoenix is about the closest market that made any sense for me to focus on. So I said, hey, I'm your guy. I have this job that it's easy for me to get in the car and drive to Phoenix to look at properties. I'll figure this market out. Let's do this. And so we did, and the rest is history. Just a couple months later, we ended up, the third offer we sent in, the third LOI, we ended up getting a 120 unit property under contract.
So yeah, well that first civilian job, I guess only civilian job really, since you proceeded to then go off on your own. But that sounds like a really soft landing and an easy and smooth transition, out of, the public sector military life to, private sector civilian life. It sounds like a perfect job and very flexible, a lot of freedom for you to pursue learning real estate syndication while you still earned a full-time salary, which is great.
It absolutely is. And it's funny when you said that, just, it made me realize we've been hearing a lot about soft landings recently.
Oh yeah.
But that was really a soft landing, especially because besides the W-2 income coming in, I had my retirement pay started and everything like that. So it really was a very easy transition for me. Then when I decided to leave all the W-2 employment behind and work, and focus on my business entirely, still have the retirement pay coming in and everything like that. So it definitely is, a little bit of added support that a lot of people don't have the luxury of.
Yeah, no, that certainly helps. Adds an income floor and a little bit of cushion. In my marriage, my wife she's a school counselor, so it's a low ceiling for income, but she also provides a floor for our household income, which frees me up to do things like run an online business, right?
Right.
It has no floor at all, but it has a high ceiling. So, anytime that you can, leverage those two things together, have an income floor and then pursue something with no ceiling, it's a great combination.
Absolutely.
So you worked this civilian job for just a year or two, it sounds like?
No, it was about 5 years actually. So
okay.
I still did it for a while.
While you were still syndicating deals.
Yes, while I was still syndicating deals, and I did my work, got my projects done, and I could balance my time. If I was working on work long after actual working hours, it didn't matter as long as I was getting everything done. But it got to where I was burning the candle at both ends. So I finally realized, it's time to go ahead and take the leap and make this work.
Yeah, and that can be especially tricky when you have a family, which I understand that you do. So.
I do, absolutely, but my daughter and my stepdaughters they're in their 20s. They're out of the house, except for one of us moved back into this recently. So it's not like we have little kids we're trying to support or anything like that. So all things being equal, it's actually a fairly easy situation for us to try this with.
Well, I love that you went out and got education, got mentorship, because when I was in my 20s and first started investing in real estate, I didn't do any of that stuff. I was young and dumb and thought I could, go it alone and, do it all myself. The arrogance of youth, right?
Right. I understand.
So, I tip my hat to you for having the maturity to say, you know what, I don't have to make all these expensive mistakes because someone else has already made them. So I just need to pay them to help me avoid all that stuff and skip to the head of the line. So tell us about your mentorship program and how that prepared you for succeeding as a syndicator and some of the expensive mistakes that you were able to avoid, because you got that education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can certainly relate to what you just talked about, because I did do some things the hard way with single family homes when I first got started. So when I got into multifamily and realized I'm just going to be doing syndications, that it's not just my money at stake here. Now we're talking about bringing investors' money into things too. I wanted to make sure I was doing things the right way and I was avoiding mistakes as much as possible. And I had, someone who's very experienced guiding me. So I joined that program. I'm still in that program. It's been 8 years now. I'm actually a coach for a different program now at the same time. So yeah, exactly. So that clued me into all of the vast differences between single family and multifamily, how to underwrite a property, how to organize and structure deals, all those different things, all the mistakes that can be made, the things that you can miss during due diligence, with in writing contracts, all kinds of different things. I'd say, and of course I continue to learn along the way too. I look back on the first couple of properties and I realized that my capital expense budget was too low. Our whole team's capital expense budget for the property was too low, and we didn't have enough built in to handle all the unexpected things that pop up long after your CapEx plan is done. Your plan might be done, but if you're holding the property for 3, 4, 5 years, you're still going to have annual, tree trimming,
things break,
parking lot maintenance, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stuff that goes wrong, and so you need to have an extra contingency budget to handle those things. Otherwise, you're going to be paying for things out of cash flow, and that's the last thing you want to do. You want to save that cash flow for your investor distributions. So.
Absolutely. So you've done seven deals now, is that right?
8 total. I have 7 that are still active, and one of them's gone full cycle.
I was just going to ask if any of them have gone full cycles. Yeah, tell us about how that deal that went full cycle. How did it go?
Yeah, that went fantastic. That was that very first deal that I got in Phoenix in 2016. We held on to it for 28 months, just under 2.5 years, and we exceeded our 5-year projections in less than 2.5 years. So.
That's great.
Yeah, it was fantastic. We did value add work to renovate unit interiors. We were able to get rent bumps that way, but at the same time, we were able to capitalize off just the markets. The entire market rents were increasing everywhere at the time. So we certainly did our added value ourselves, but we were also is just the right time to be able to capitalize off organic rent increases and also cap rate compression that was happening with the properties just becoming more and more valuable. So we are able to capitalize off of all of those things by the time that we sold the property. And I think off the top of my head, the total return to investors was about 135% in less than 2.5 years. So if they invest $100,000, they got their principal back plus another $135,000 between the cash flow and the equity growth.
That's phenomenal. That's great. Congratulations on that deal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So Blue Sky Equity Partners. So you're a syndicator. Tell us about your niche in the market. What do you guys look for? Is there a geographical area that you operate in? Is there a specific type of multifamily property or other type of property that you specialize in? Tell us about your focus, your niche as a syndicator.
Yeah, absolutely. So Blue Sky Equity Partners is, we don't do deals completely on our own as a GP team. We do work with others right now to offer deals. So as far as my experience, I have been a GP on like a lead GP and an asset manager on deals in Phoenix and in Tucson, Arizona, one in Fort Worth, Texas, and one in Denver, Colorado. And I still have deals active in all those markets right now. I've also been a co-sponsor, a little bit more in the backseat, not taking the lead on things, on a deal in Tucson and a couple deals in Houston. So really, I'm not looking to get out much, to expand much more outside those areas. I still like Arizona for a lot of reasons, although it's taking a slight hit right now more than some of those other markets are. While the interest rates are going crazy, but I do think that it will recover from that over the next couple of years, and it's still a great place to invest. I also love how the property taxes and insurance are low there compared to a lot of other states, and property taxes are capped at 5% growth per year, so they're predictable. I've seen so many properties get in trouble in Texas, for example, because of unexpected increases in property taxes and insurance. Insurance is kind of a tough deal right now all over the country. So I'm really looking at staying in those areas. I like them because, for those reasons I just talked about, also because I can get there easily, either driving the car or through a direct flight. I've got relatives in Arizona that I go and visit whenever I'm there. So I really don't have a need to expand too much. Now, that said, if I had the right offer from a potential partner, someone I had known for a long time and trusted, and they especially if they lived in the market, say I was using this example with an investor earlier today, Nashville. Nashville is a great market. I'm not very knowledgeable on that market, but if I had a deal from a couple of guys I know who do invest there and live there, that might be something I would potentially consider joining forces on. So.
No, that makes sense. So, I want to dig a little bit deeper into something that you just touched on briefly there, and that's insurance. But I want to give a little bit of context. So, 2 years ago, no one was talking about interest rate risk, right? And then, of course, interest rates shot through the roof because the Fed had to combat inflation. And now everyone takes interest rate risk into account, right? In underwriting their deals. So, we, in our investment club, we hear people say, oh, but, what about interest rate risk? And I'm like, that's a known risk at this point. Like, that's not what's going to bite you in a year and a half, 2 years from now. It's something else that none of us are talking about right now that's going to bite us, right? So I've heard a couple sponsors mention insurance risk as a risk that is emerging right now in the multifamily space. So first, I want to hear your thoughts on insurance and how to mitigate the risk of insurers, doubling your costs or your premium costs or whatever they may do to that pricing, and then hear about any other risks that you see in the multifamily syndication space that maybe none of us are talking about, but we should be when we're assessing risk in these deals.
Sure, absolutely. So, insurance is kind of crazy right now. And I literally just got an article in my inbox earlier this morning saying that the average policy is up 28%. That was the headline. I haven't read the article, to be fair, so I don't know if that's a year over year or compared to when. I don't know. But I have read some similar articles about this. I have one property that when we got an offer for our renewal this past year, it was for a 40% increase, which we thought this is ridiculous. So we started shopping it around. It took till the last minute to get the offer that we were waiting for, and that was for a 130% increase. Wow. So needless to say, we went back to the 40% increase. So insurance is tight all over the country right now. There's been a lot of named storms that did a lot of damage, especially, I can't remember what it's called, but the one in Florida last year, really, really bad damage. There's been a lot in the Denver area on the north side. There was a fire that caused a lot of damage, a wildfire. In California, there's been a lot of wildfires. Texas, there's continuous, tornadoes and hailstorms and wind damage and stuff like that. It's another reason I like Arizona. Arizona doesn't have much in the way of natural disasters. They don't have earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, sometimes just a haboob windstorm during the monsoon season in the summertime. And that's about it, which is why insurance is a lot lower there. As far as what people can do about it, a lot of it is that I can think of off the top of my head is in your buying criteria. A lot of it's the older properties that are seeing the largest jumps that at least what I've heard and what I've seen. I know of an insurance carrier that is active in Arizona that is doing anything that can to deny new coverage for any property older than 1985. Wow. So it kind of goes back to your buy box. Where are you looking to buy? What are your criteria, and all that. As far as what you can do, find a good creative insurance broker for one thing. That'll help you a lot. But then you can always try things about increasing your deductible, that is an option. Of course, you have to have the reserves to be able to support that. You can go to your property management company, and sometimes your property management company will have like a blanket policy that they utilize with a certain carrier that they can offer to all of the properties that they manage. And I have not had experience with that, but I've heard about that as a technique from people who are more active in Texas than I am, for example. And we do have a property our property management company is just investigating that right now. I've got a call a couple of days from now about that, actually. So work with your mortgage broker, or I'm sorry, your insurance broker on what the possibilities are. When we got that quote for 40% increase on that one property, and it was because part of it was they wanted us to do something ridiculous. They wanted us to install essentially wired smoke detector system across the entire property to be able to.
Sounds expensive.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not something you do in a mid-1970s property. That wasn't code. And when we reached out to the local fire department to ask about, suitable options for doing this, they're like, why the heck do you want to do that? They're just like scratching their heads of why. So it was a bad kind of situation to begin with.
Are there any other risks that you see in multifamily that maybe no one's talking about right now, but maybe they should?
Well, what we're also seeing a lot right now is increases in payroll. That's one of the big ones. Just due to the normal inflation that has happened over the last few years, the rents are coming back under control. In most places, they are stabilized or still increasing, but they're just increasing more slowly. There are a few markets out there where they're declining just a little bit, not a whole lot, but the market as a whole just taking a tiny bit of a dip. But meanwhile, the expenses are still increasing. Insurance is a big one. Property taxes is a big one. But also just things like payroll, as everyone's income catches up to all of the inflation that's happened over the last few years, we're going to have to pay our people more, especially with low unemployment right now. If you want
labor market.
Exactly. If you want quality employees, you're going to have to pay them for it. You got to pay them what they're worth. So you have to have the budget for that. So it's kind of a weird situation right now where some of our expense increases can be larger than our rent increases. It won't always stay that way, but for a couple of years, that's more common than not.
No, that makes sense. Well, I want to be respectful of your time here, but I want to also hear more about what you guys are doing with Blue Sky Equity Partners. Where can people connect with you and learn more about what you're doing? And do you have any freebies that you can give to our audience members?
Yeah, absolutely. So just due to my own background, we work as heavily as possible with the veteran community, but not exclusively with the veteran community. So that's just kind of who we're more aligned with. Sure. People can find us on our website, which is Blue Sky. It's no E in it, but if you put the E in, it'll still redirect to the right spot. So BLUSKY-equity.com. There will be a pop-up if you go there offering a free webinar that we have titled How to Recession-Proof Your Retirement with Hands-Off Commercial Real Estate Investing. And that's what we talk to people about all the time, is just the power of passive investing. When I got into investing in single-family homes, as I was moving around, I realized I still had to put more work into it than I expected to have to, even though I had a property management company. And for people who just really want to do their jobs and don't want to have, they want the income, but they don't want to have to manage the properties. They don't want to have to do a lot of extra work. They're raising families, and they just prioritize their free time and their family time over these kinds of things. Then passive investing is a really fantastic opportunity that makes a lot of sense for people.
No, I love that. And I love the fact that you guys are serving a military veteran community as well. It's often an underserved community. So no, that sounds great. Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Brian. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, we will catch you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Stay in touch. Support at sparkrental.com. Let us know what you want to hear more about, and we will catch you on the flip side.